In this video, I'm going to be building myself this simple freestanding herb planter. A few weeks back, I made a mobile multi-layer planter for my folks and loved it, but needed a taller one for my porch setup. And I have plans available for both over my website. Let me show you how I built it. First, I started by building the body. I took my material over to my miter saw stand, flipped out the wings, and cut my boards to length. By the way, the plans do come with all the dimensions, a cut list, and a material shopping list. Next, I took things to my table saw and ripped my parts to width. The body starts by joining the side piece to the back and the front piece. Since it will be outside and around moisture, I'm using exterior rated wood glue on all my joints. I threw an 18 gauge brad nail to hold things together while the glue has time to set up. Next, I needed to repeat the process to create a bottom. Since it's going to be a lot of repeat measurements, I went to my miter saw scrap bin and cut something down to the spacing needed. And this way I could add in all of the parts quickly. You can use one spacer, but using two will make sure the parts stay square. And I do this until I get all the way down to the other end so that I end up with a little ladder looking assembly. I set that aside and started working on the parts that will create the front and back walls of the body. To make the finished unit look more decorative, I first added a slight round over to all the parts that will make up the slats. Then I personally always find it easiest to sand my parts before assembly. So next I grouped my parts together and gave everything a good sanding with my palm sander until everything was smooth to touch. Okay, and let's start putting it together. I pushed my slats together and also lined up the ends so that I could measure over once and use a speed square to draw a line. This is where I'll add my vertical pieces to hold all the slats together. What I'm going to do here is use a spacer to create an even gap in between each slat. Then use wood glue and a brad nail once again to attach this vertical piece. I'm using my speed square to make sure I'm attaching it at a 90. Then I'm also using it to make sure I'm flushing up the edge of each slat with the top one. This gives you a nice straight line. Now I repeat by moving the spacer down until the entire wall is built. Perfect. Okay, now to join this to the body. I used the same spacer as before so that the gap would remain even. Then just place the overhanging legs into the bottom. Everything fits good dry, so I turn the components on their face to make attaching easier. Again, using wood glue and brad nails here. Once the spacer is removed, it looked like this. I repeated the process to build an identical wall to make up the back. Then attached it in the same way. Nice and easy. Alrighty, now let's create the sidewalls. And I definitely cheat here. Instead of taking measurements with a tape, I simply hold my leftover scrap boards and use a pencil to mark the length needed. Once I cut it to size, I attach it in place. And a great thing about having things mobile in a shop is you can move needed tools to different work areas when needed. Since this is a few cuts, I wheeled my saw closer so that I could just pivot around instead of walking. That's the body almost complete. For now, I set it aside and started building the legs. I actually had a leftover 4x4 from a recent project, so that's what I used to mill down my legs. However, a 2x4 would also work. I created my dimensions so that I could get 4 equal legs from this one board. For joinery, I went with half laps. Now, if you're new and want to simplify the process, you can use butt joints, but half laps do create a very clean look in the end project. Now, when I'm making a lot of half laps, I like to bundle my parts together with masking tape before taking them to the table saw and cutting the joint. And this way, nothing slips around on me while I'm cutting. You can speed things up by changing out the blade to a dado stack and take away more material at once. But I don't mind making more cuts and not messing with the blade change. You can see how I keep a leg around to test fit my cuts as I'm making them. You don't want it to be too tight. I'm just going for snug. Once again, it's more wood glue and brad nails to join things together. If you get the height of the half lap correct, the boards should come out flush with each other and give the base a really flawless look. However, if half laps are intimidating to you, this stretcher can be cut to length so that it can fit right inside both legs and be attached with screws. Just like what I did here with the bottom stretcher to attach both legs together. It's a straight cut that I use wood glue, pre-drill to prevent splitting, then drive in a screw on both ends. That will create a bottom so that next I can set the body of the planter in place and attach it. I use screws here without wood glue so that if I ever need to replace the body in the future, I can easily remove it and rebuild it. Nice. Okay, just a few more details. First, a little bit of trim around the body. This is a simple wrap of more slat-like boards to give it a finished look. Then on the inside, I added a few slats to the bottom framing, which will support plastic pots but allow water to escape out. And that is it. Well, for the build, I threw on a coat of finish and went and found my herbs to start filling it up with. I planned the dimensions for the inside of this planter to house these very standard planter's pots. As I was preparing the dimensions of the body to house multiple planters that are just very standard off-the-shelf pots. I hope that this video has helped you out if you're wanting an herb planter that is freestanding. Of course, the height of this thing can easily be changed by simply changing the height of the legs. Don't forget that I have plans for this over on my website, as well as the other herb planter and a huge assortment of other projects. So I'll leave you a link down in the description if you want to check it out. And I'll see you on whatever I'm building next, guys. Rooster, please chill. She's so cute over there basking in the sun.